Hello, BookTube, and welcome to Week 3, Part 1 of the Future History Project. And we're continuing to read the robot stories of Isaac Asimov. And this week, for this video, I'm dealing with 3 more. And I have my phone here just to sort of refresh my memory of where they originally appeared. Now, these are an interesting trio because all 3 have something of similar things, and the last 2 and 3, have some similarities as well, and more than one. We'll get to that in a moment. Well, yeah, they all have. Anyway, well, I'm jumping the gun there. The first story is Segregation List, which appeared in December 1967 in a magazine called Abbottempo. And that was the print magazine of Abbott Industries, which was a medical device and healthcare company. And it starts out with it's basically 2 doctors discussing a patient and then speaking to a patient. The patient needs a new heart. And the doctors are trying to talk the patient into taking a synthetic artificial heart, but the patient is determined to take a metal artificial heart. He thinks it'll be stronger and last longer, and the doctor goes through all the permeations of that. Yes, it's a bit stronger, but by the time if anything was going to hit the heart or damage it that way, it would have to go through the person's rib cage, and they'd be dead by the time the heart would be damaged. But the person is determined to have a medical heart. So the doctor acquiesces, and then he's talking to his colleague as well, and they're talking about robots that come in, and it's odd. Humans a lot of times want mechanical replacements, metal replacements, and the robots, when they need replacement parts, they want synthetic, like organic synthetic replacement parts, and they find that a bit odd. And then there's a reveal at the end, almost like in a Twilight Zone style. If you weren't watching, or if you weren't able to see the doctors themselves and maybe just their voices, you find out that the doctors are robots, mechanical robots. So it's a very interesting story of how each, like, humans wanted to, like, the idea is humans want to be almost a bit more like robots, and robots want to be more like human in appearance and parts. It's quite interesting. But that was published in 1967. The second story is called Let's Get Together, and that appeared in Infinity Science Fiction, February 1957. And it's interesting because it's in a future, potentially about 100 years from the time it was written, so 2050s, 2060s, and the Cold War is still going on, but no longer termed as sort of the Russians. It sounds like there's an Asian aspect to it, and it's rather an us and them. And they point out that for them, on their side, they see it as us and them as well. And so the us in this case, who's telling the story, is the United States, and still a country that is still going, according to the story. And there is decentralization of government and for businesses as well. And it's a bit of a spy story, to tell the truth, because so the one character comes back from Moscow to say that there are 10 agents that are humanoid robots that have in each of them a part of a TC bomb, a total conversion bomb, that is, according to the story, the most powerful sort of atomic bomb there is. And separately, they are perfectly fine and not a threat to a certain extent in bomb wise, but when they get together, boom. And this is a big boom. So they don't know how long they've been there. They know they've been there for a while, and because and they're next to undetectable from humans, at least in visual inspection. And their side, them, are 20 years ahead or so in this technology. And so they figure, well, they don't know what the target is or where they're going to get together, but they figure, okay, well, for like a terrorist attack, the biggest populated area is going to be New York. So they're assuming it's going to be New York. But and they're trying everything to sort of test people and everybody, because the way they figured is people that went across the border were kidnapped, duplicated, and sent back. So they're checking on, like, there's tons, but they're checking everybody that has gone across the border or that live near the border, and it's a huge task. And they realize that eventually this information will get out. And in some ways, it could be more damaging to the society than the actual bomb, the fear. And they start thinking that, well, is it real? Like, is this really happening? Or is that the aim of things, is to create the fear? And it's suggested that maybe we should just go along and, as normal, forget about it. If it happens, it happens. And if it is a ruse to make everybody have fear, then it won't work. But the sort of, but they're getting together. The robotics industry, with all their specialists, are having a big conference. It's a sort of a rush conference to get together and discuss this, how they can, identify these humanoid robots. And so, and then all of a sudden it dawns on the president, like it dawns on them that that's the target. Not in it, it won't be for numbers of people. It will be for taking out their special, like they're already 20 years behind. But if they take out all the robotic specialists in the us category, then they'll be put back decades and decades, maybe a century or more. So, and then they find out that the person who actually brought them the story is the one that was instigated this. He's part of this as well. And he was hoping this would be set up, and he contacted all the other ones once they realized what was happening, and they all sort of self-destructed themselves, and knowing that they wouldn't be caught and taken prisoner. But then they find out, well, there's more than 10. There's the 11th, and so it ends with the fake person bringing the thing without a head, and that is shot off by a laser gun of some sort, and so now they have a body to. It ends with they have a body to dissect and to learn from. So yeah, so that's 1957, and the third one is called Tercentenary Incident, and this is set, well, initially in 2076, 300 years after, on July 4th to be exact, and the president is doing a speech, and while he's out in the audience, poof, he disappears in a cloud. And then all of a sudden he reappears up on a pedestal, and everybody couldn't figure out. Well, what happened was he had a robot that was to take some of the pressure off him to do talks and things like that, and in case of assassination. And they figured that's what it was. It was an assassination attempt to kill the president. And then he winds up making one of his best speeches ever, and winning the next election. And it's very instrumental with sort of world powers and a bigger sort of like a solar type of power struggle, that they can do more and have a bigger voice in the greater sort of political arena. But one character who winds up leaving the Secret Service, he still investigates this, and then 2 years later, he has figured out, or he thinks he's figured out, what has happened. And he goes to see the personal secretary of the president, who's still in power, and tells him that he says there's a he's learned of a secret weapon, a disruptor that can disrupt atoms and make things go away. And he said that's what was used. And it's kind of interesting. They're talking, saying, "Oh, you're talking science fiction here," which is kind of neat. You've got a science fiction story that's set in the future, and the characters are saying, you're telling me a science fiction story. I thought that was a neat little sort of, I think Isaac Asimov's sense of humor, which comes out a lot in these stories. But the guy denies any possibility of this, but he keeps telling him he thinks that's what's happened, and he thinks that actually what's happened is that the president was actually assassinated, and the robot has taken over. And the secretary just doesn't believe him, but then he convinces the secretary to check. And then this one has a bit of a twist to it, because it's a bit of a mystery type thing. And that was published in the Ellery Queen's Mystery Magazine in August 1976. Hence, it's a mystery. So it has a twist at the end. So I won't tell you what the full twist is. But it has a lot of, like I say, the interaction is kind of neat, and he's telling, it's unraveling of a mystery, basically, hence the Ellery Queen connection with this. And I said that each one had something sort of interesting to it. The first one and the third one obviously were not published in science fiction magazines. The second one was, but a very small magazine. It didn't last that long. But also, too, the number 2 and number 3 are androids. This is the first time, that we've encountered so far, androids for Isaac Asimov. They will appear again. But this is the first time, and also very strangely, the Segregation List was published in a magazine for an industry magazine, which is kind of interesting in 1957, and especially well, it's medical orientated, obviously, because of the artificial heart and our other artificial body parts that they talk about. But the other thing with the androids is it's interesting because we dealt with this, or I dealt with this a little bit with in the robot section of New World's November, that androids now represent something that's humanoid, but it comes from 1920 Carl Capek's play RUR, which is Rossum's Universal Robots, and it's a company that creates synthetic humans made out of flesh and blood, but they're synthetic, and they're called robots, meaning worker. And it was the first time it was sort of introduced to in science fiction. And the play first went on in 1921 and then translated and was actually played, or staged in the U.S. and all over the world. So it's become important. But the word robot now means mechanical generally, and android means human looking, not so much, it doesn't have to be flesh and blood, but it's humanoid looking and looks like flesh and blood. And well, it's got to do with the androids, first of all saying that they will work with humans, but then they destroy humanity, and that's where sort of androids come in. He doesn't actually mention that they're androids in here, but we assume, we know, as the reader, we know they are. And again, these are they have sort of different tones to them, but there is the humor of Asimov that's in there. And the first one's a fairly short story, The Segregationist. And yeah, it's just it was neat about how artificial sort of body parts is brought into a story, and especially because of the company that the magazine was for. And yeah, so there's the first three stories. I will leave the details down below, and I'll leave links for our co-hosts, and as well as and there's I'll leave another blog post that Scott Danielson done for I think it was it's for week 2, I think. Yeah, week 2. He did, in his blog post, he mentions reading the second week's robot story. So I'll leave that below as well. And if you have any questions, or you still want to read the Future History Project, or from the Future History Project, not even necessarily reading everything we are, do send me an email. All the details are below in the description. And I'll see you next time, Boat 2. Take care.